Leonie from Frogfish Cards here. Today I'm going to bring you a photo frame that I've made from boxboard and Stampin' Up! DSP. This one is made from the Floral range, which reminds me a lot of the old-fashioned blue china. And this one is made from the Love Affections range. I'm wearing two pieces of coordinating cardstock in order to make the frame, two 12 by 12s. Out of the first DSP, you need to cut 6.5 by 9 and a 3 by 6.5. And I found that if I cut it out at 6.5, the 3 was the bit that I actually cut off the bottom. So you're just using a little over half a sheet. With the second DSP, I need a 5. It's more important to get this particular piece right. So a 5 and 5/8 by 8 1/4 piece of DSP. And then with the piece that's left over, which is not quite 6.5, it's actually 6 3/8 by 9. And again, you want that piece that you chop off the bottom, which is at 6 3/8 by 9, by 3, 6 3/8 by 3. So you've actually just chopped it off that bottom section of cardstock. You'll also need a piece of window sheet, which is at 5.5 by 8, and 2 pieces of boxboard, which is actually just a piece of A4 boxboard cut in half, a little under half, but the measurements for that are 5 3/4 by 8 1/4. You need 2 at 5 3/4 by 8 1/4. Now, this is the thinner boxboard. I use a lot of boxboard because I make books and things like that. So this is the thinner boxboard, and the thicker one is the one I use for books. So it would be that thickness of the 2 pieces put together. You want the thinner one, but any good craft supplier will have boxboard. You can also buy it on eBay, but I buy mine on eBay, but you need to be careful of what grade you get. This is the thinnest you can get, and it's called boxboard. That's enough about the boxboard. To get started, we're going to require 1 piece of the boxboard and from the second lot of DSP, which is the one that has 3 coordinating sheets, you want the biggest sheet of those, which is the 6 3/8 by 9 inches. Okay, and what we're going to do is adhere it to the boxboard. So to do that, I'm actually going to use tear and tape. Now, I just want to explain a little bit about tear and tape. Stampin' Up! Tear and tape is great for adhering paper to paper, or thin cardstock to thin cardstock. But when you're using boxboard and things like that, you need to have it really, really quite sticky. So there are 2 different other types of tear and tape that you can acquire. This one's Express Extra Tacky, it's called, and this one's just red tape, but it's very, very tacky, and you can get these from most card suppliers. So I'm going to use the Express today, and you're just taping across the boxboard in even intervals. So I'm going to do that, and when I'm finished I will come back to you. Okay, so you want about that much tear and tape. And I always like to bone it down just to make sure that it's really well adhered to the box board. It just gives a much better hold than glue for this application. So once you've done that, you're taking the back of your tear and tape off, your wax paper off your tear and tape, and you're putting the side that you want shown of your cardstock down towards your work mat. Then you are making sure that you are evenly spaced around the outside of your box board with your DSP and dropping the board down. Remember to get it right, otherwise you're going to have to start over again, because this stuff is extremely sticky, and once you've adhered it to the cardstock, there's no getting it off. It will just rip. So you need to get that right. Then I'm just going to glue from the edge of the box board to the edge of the box board out to the outer edge of the paper. Now for this application I normally drag it to the end of the table and bend it up, so I'm going to try and do it without doing that bit so that I can show you in the camera. You need to use your thumbs and really give that a nice crisp fold so that you have no wrinkles or bulges on that edge. And then you're just folding it over and rubbing it with the bone until it adheres. It shouldn't take long. And you're repeating that action on the other side. Okay. Again, you need that nice solid fold, no bulges, no wrinkles, and then you're just boning it down until it adheres. Then there's some little flaps that sort of are here in the corner. You want to cut them out. That's why you don't take the glue all the way to the edge of the cardstock or the DSP, because otherwise it will adhere to the other piece of DSP that's hanging over the edge here, and we don't want that in this application. We want to have nice neat corners, and you don't want to have bulk where it's not required. So it's better to get rid of the excess bulk, and that's why I cut these little tabs out so that you don't have bulk where it's not required. So then you'll get your boning tool and you'll just fold that edge over so that it's at a right angle and press it down so it's nice and sharp. And you'll do that on all four corners. And again, you are gluing down the edge of your box board and to the outside edge of your DSP. On both sides. And folding in the same principle with that nice sharp fold by just pushing your thumbs up from underneath to get that nice sharp line against the box board. And then you're boning that down with your boning tool and getting it to adhere. Then you're going to bring in your other piece of box board. You're going to place that piece that we've just done to one side. We don't need that right now. And I'm just going to bring in another cutting mat just so that I don't have to remove my white sheet to be able to show you this process. And what you're doing is you are measuring in from the two longest edges of your box board, 1 1/4 inch. And down the bottom as well, on the two longest edges, top and bottom of your box board. And then you're ruling a line down those two marks, joining them together. So you've come in 1 inch either side and you've drawn a line from top to bottom. Now you're going to turn it over to the side. Now I don't want you to go past those two lines. I just want you to come in from the edge 1 1/4 at the top and 1 1/4, if I can find it, there it is, at the bottom on both sides. And again, you're drawing the line. Now you're only drawing the line from 2 previous lines that have been drawn. So you're not going right to the edge of your cardstock, your box board. You are only going from the first pencil line to the second pencil line. And again, on this side, it's from the first pencil line to the second pencil line. There's something astray here, that's right. That's not. Okay. So from the first pencil line to the second pencil line. Now the reason why I don't draw it all the way to the edge is, from my experience, when ladies are cutting out this, they'll cut right along the pencil line and cut out parts of the box board that you don't want cut out. So to prevent that from happening, that line that goes to the edge of the cardstock, to the edge of the box board on either side, just rub it out so that you have a rectangle drawn in the middle of your, in the central section of your box board. So that's what you want it to look like. And then you're going to use a scalpel to cut out that rectangle. Now we need to cut it out in one piece. You cannot cut it out in sections. It needs to be cut out in one piece. So that's why we're using a scalpel and a steel rule, and you're cutting along your drawn line only. Now it takes a couple of goes to get through this because it's a bit thick, but that's alright, you will get there. And I'll come back to you when I finish cutting out this rectangle. Just remember, you only want to cut where you have drawn your lines, not beyond that point. Okay, so this is what you want it to look like. That will create the framing for your photograph, and this is the piece that you cut out. Now we need to keep this in one piece because this is what we're going to be making the stabilizer from for the back of your frame, so that it can stand up on its own. So it's really important to keep this in one piece. Hello, you have a pearl. working on the piece that we have cut the window out of, you are going to require your other DSP, which is the coordinating piece of cardstock. So, or the DSP, which is just the two, you've got the two pieces that are the same, so you're just using the larger piece of those two pieces that you had the same. So this is actually 6.5 by 9 inches. And with this process, again, you want to tape your box board. So I'm going to do that, and I'll come back to you when I have finished. Okay, so you want it to represent something like that. And again, you're going to remove your wax paper from the back of your tear and tape, the extra tacky tear and tape, and then we are going to adhere it to the DSP. Sorry, just concentrating on what I'm doing. Losing track of thought. So again, you need to put the piece that you want displayed on the front down to your work mat, so that the opposite side is the piece that you don't want displaying. And you are going to centralize your box board over the DSP so that you have enough to turn up around each of the edges and drop. Once you've done that, there's no coming back with the extra tacky tape. Again, you want to bone it like such, and you are going to require your cutting mat again, a steel rule and your scalpel, and we are going to cut on the diagonal, so from one corner to the other corner. And you're just going to cut through the DSP just to the box board, from the internal to the internal corner of the box board. So again, you're going on the diagonal, and from the internal corner to the internal corner of your DSP, of your box board, you're cutting the DSP. Make sure that you always put the lid back on your scalpel. They are very sharp and they can cause lots of damage. Then from underneath, you want to just push up your DSP, having a nice sharp line on it, like so. And what I did is I actually trimmed the flaps back until they were about 1 inch wide, because you don't need all that excess hanging over the edge and creating bulk. You just want it to be nice and flat. Okay, then again we're bringing in the glue, and you're just gluing that DSP, coating it entirely with glue, bringing it up, making sure you've got a nice flat edge so that you have no bulges, no creases, and gluing it down. And you're doing that on all 4 of those flaps. Then you're doing the outside edges as you did with the back, and you're just gluing from the edge of the box board to the edge of the box board and out to the edge of your DSP, making sure you've got a nice sharp fold, using your boning tool to adhere it down. So from the edge of the box board to the edge of the box board out to the edge of the DSP, nice sharp fold, and boning tool so that it looks like that once you've finished. Now we're going to adhere our window sheet. So to do that, I run a bead of glue about 1/8 of an inch in from the edge of that window and 1/8 of an inch around from the outside edge of the window sheet, and then you're just placing one on top of the other . It's just got something on there that I'm not happy about. Maybe it's on the back of this one. Okay, so then you have your window sheet adhered to your frame, which protects your photograph once you've put it in. Putting that to one side, we are going to now work on our stabiliser. So you require the two smaller pieces of DSP and the piece of rectangle box board that you cut out from the centre section of your front frame, of the front of the frame, to create your window. So in from the bottom edge, you're coming 2 inches, and up from the bottom right hand corner you're coming up 2 inches, and then from the top left hand corner you are coming in 1 inch and making a mark, and coming down from the top left hand corner 1 inch and making a mark. So then you're ruling on the diagonal of the top left hand corner from those 1 inch marks. Then from that diagonal line down to where you made the 2 inch mark, you are ruling a line. And then from the bottom of that left hand corner where you've made that first pencil mark, you are ruling to your second mark that you've made across the bottom edge of the right hand corner 2 inches and ruling a line. And then I just used scissors to cut this out. you'll have something that looks like that, and that becomes your stabilizer. So now, if you notice on my sample, I have put the colour that the DSP cardstock on the back part of the stabilizer that coordinates with the front. And then underneath, I've got the piece that matches, I don't know if you can see that, but it matches the backing plate of the DSP backing plate of the frame. I just think it looks nice contrast. So if you wanted, you could reverse this and have the piece that's not matching this DSP on the back section, and then have the matching piece on the front section. It's entirely up to yourself. But I am going to do it the same as I've done it in my sample. So I'm going to use the back matching my back. So you want the right angled corner going to the right hand side when you glue this to your cardstock. The right hand angled corner, this one, going to the right hand side of your cardstock, and you want to put the longest straight edge parallel with the outside edge of your piece of DSP. Then we are cutting off the excess, so just really this one here, you want to cut it back about so that it's about ½ an inch wide. And this one here as well, just because you don't need all that excess. And then you're just going to glue it and fold it, very similar to how we did the outside frame. You've just got a few more folds on this one than what you did on the outside frame. And the last fold will be the straightest edge. So you want to bring this in nice and tight, and then cut out those excess pieces that you don't require. At this time you're just cutting them up flat because you might have to re-angle them, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. So just out flat. So this is where you might need to re-angle them. So that piece there needs to be cut off on an angle, like that, so that when you bring this over, you've got a nice neat fold and no bulk. So again, you're doing that here, where you're cutting it on an angle, and there. And I'm going to cut that on a bit more of an angle because we don't need all that excess bulk. So then you're just going to bring, the last two folds will be the largest straight edges, so the longest straight edges on your stabilizer, and that sort of holds it all in together. So just put some glue. And again, it's a nice crisp fold, just using your thumb and folding it over. So that's how it will look. So when it sits on the frame, that side will be down to the back of your backing plate, like so. Okay. So now you want to do the other side. So how I do the other side is, again, I'm placing the piece of DSP that I want showing to my work mat. Then you need to reverse your stabilizer so that your right angle corner is to the left hand side of your DSP, and you're placing this over that and just tracing a line around that outside edge. And then when you cut it out, you need to remember to cut it out on the inside of the pencil line, not on the external, on the internal line, because if you cut it out from the outside of the line and not the inside of the line, the piece will be too big for your stabilizer because you've actually traced around the outside of that. So you need to just make it a fraction smaller so that it will fit neatly over what you've already done, and cover that piece of box board that's not yet covered. Okay, so then that will go on there like that. So before you adhere that to your stabilizer, just find the lid to my glue, yep. You also need to get your final piece of cardstock that you have not done anything with, which is the piece that is 5 5/8 by 8 1/4, and we need to ink around the edge of the DSP. Now DSP is internally white, and I think it looks unfinished if it's not inked, so I always ink it. You'll probably get sick of me saying that in my videos, but I just find it really tacky, and I can see it, I notice it, and it annoys me. But everyone's different, and everyone has their own style, and so I'm not saying you have to do it. I just think it gives a finished look if you do it. So I ink them. So you're inking your stabilizer piece that you have cut out, and you are inking your backing piece that goes on the back piece of your panel, so that when you look through your frame, you're not just looking at brown box board, it's actually coordinated to your paper. So once you've done that, you can adhere the piece to your stabilizer. Sorry, I should have it up over here so you can see it. So you're just adhering that piece that we have cut out onto your stabilizer just to finish it off, and make sure you bone it down so it has, and about halfway in between these 2 points and about ½ an inch in, you want to punch a hole. Like so. Then you need to place it into the corner where it's going to be sitting, holding it in place, using the crocodile again we are going to find that hole that's in the stabilizer, punch through that, and then punch through your backing plate of your frame. So you actually have a hole in the frame and you have a hole in the stabilizer. You'll need a 10mm brad, just one. I'm using a white one for this application, but if you can get one as close as possible to your cardstock. In this example, I used Night of Navy, and in this one I used Night of Navy as well. So just as close as you can to whatever colour you are using for your frame. And what then you are doing is with your glue, you are placing about ½ inch down and all the way across a good amount of glue. Then you are putting this back over that hole and pushing your brad through and opening it up so that it's nice and straight. Okay, now I like to put plenty of glue over this brad just to hold it stable once the job is finished. Then with your piece of DSP that is going to go over the top of this backing panel to hide all your mechanics. That's why I do not do this until the last process, so that you don't see this brad coming through on the other side of your DSP. It's going to cover that. You need to tape it with your extra tacky tape. So I'm going to do that, and I'll come back to you when I have finished. So you want it to look a bit like that. Make sure you bone it so that the tape has adhered well to the paper, and then you're removing the backing paper of your tear and tape. Now be careful when you place this down, because you're only going to have one go at it. This tape is very, very sticky. I cannot emphasize that enough. So you want to just sort of line it up with the bottom and allow it to just drop to your work. And again, you are boning it to make sure that it has adhered well, and you can see that now you can't see that brad, that internal workings has been disguised by me putting the extra piece of DSP over the top. So when you adhere your frame to the backing plate, you want it to open on the opposite end to where your stabilizer is. So remembering that, you want to flip it over, and you are taping from the left hand side across the top, down the right hand side, and back to the left hand side. You are not taping this section here. So I'll just do that for you now. Again, making sure you run your bone along the tape just to make sure it's well and truly adhered. And you use your tear and take the backing wax paper off the tear and tape. And you place that onto your backing plate of your frame, and all you need to do is line up the bottom because they're exactly the same size, and drop it. So now I'm going to show you how to make the flower that I have put on the top corner. This is made from the Pansy punch. So you need 5 of your flower colour. So whatever colour you choose, your coordinating colour to that flower. You need 5, and you need 1 green. Whatever green you would like to use. I'm actually using garden green for mine, but you can use any of the Stampin' Up! Greens that you like. In my first application I used Old Olive, and in my second application I used Wild Wasabi, but this one I'm using Garden Green. And I'll show you how to do that. So you want a foam mat, an old mat, foam mat, a mouse mat, or whatever you have. You'll need a moulding tool or an old paintbrush or something like that. Some people just use a wet one just to lightly wet that down so that it's not so hard to work with. And then you just, from the outside, moulding it in. And you need to do that to every one of these flowers. So I'll do that and I'll come back to you when I'm finished. Okay, so I'm going to now start. So what I actually do is I run the glue just around the middle of those petals, just to help them, the first one, to stay in place. So then you're pushing this one in, and then this one, the petal goes over the top of that petal. But with this one, you're tucking this one in behind that one, and it's over the top and underneath, and over the top and underneath, all the way around to the last one. And then you need to flick that out a little bit, just on this side, not on both sides, because you don't want it to pop out the other side. And just push that in until it's nice and neat and all curled up like so. Don't know if you can see that or not, but it's sort of all curled up. And just hold that until the glue adheres. Just like that. Now with the second one, you want to put a really good dollop of glue in the middle, placing this so that the petals line up with the other petal on that. And again, it's the same process. So you're bringing this one up, that one over that one and under that one, then over that one, then under that one, all the way around. So that's over and that's under. And you're just holding it up like that. Now you shouldn't have to put any more glue than that glue that's underneath. it should, with the slight bit of moisture that's in the cardstock, just stay in place without having to over glue it. And you can see it's starting to build up like a rose. It's really quite a pretty flower once you get it together. And so you're doing that again with a third one, exactly the same process. Big dollop of glue in the middle. And placing your bud so that the petals line up, and it's folding over and under. Just like that. Now with the last two petals, I actually want you to reverse them so they're down this way, and then just with your moulding tool, you're doing tiny little circular motions in the back of that, and it just brings it up so that the petals are sort of folded down this way. And the middle is coming up. And again, you want to do it to the other one as well. And what you're doing then is you are gluing again in the middle. And you're placing that one with the petals matching. And then this one, you're gluing again in the middle. And you're placing this one with the petals offset. So that's the main body of the flower built. Then with your green, I actually cut it into 5 sections, and when you cut it, it looks a bit like a love heart. So you get 5 little love hearty shapes coming from the one flower. Just like that. And again, you want it to curve down. So you put a bit of glue onto the point of the love heart. And you're offsetting that underneath there so that it looks like that. And you want to do that to all 5 of those. And the back side of it will look a bit like that, and the front side will look like that. And you place it in the top corner of your frame. So just a real good dollop of glue, about the size of a pea. And then placing your rose on top. And letting it set. In my samples, this one I have lots of little coloured diamantes on it. I don't know if you can see that in the video. And this one I have pearls on it. On the centre of all those little diamonds I have put pearls, but with this one all I'm going to do is a few little pearls around this corner. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do with this one. It's just those few little pearls down this bottom corner and a lovely rose on that top corner. I hope you've enjoyed this demonstration. Have a nice day.